Hello, my name is Adam, and welcome to Cast from the Crypt.
Hey, I'm Adrian.
I changed it up. I'm sorry.
I like it. I like it.
Um, Today we're talking about a a movie we're very excited to talk about, and that
Get out of
is
here.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022.
Don't lie to them.
It just released on Netflix.
You're a liar.
Why am I a liar?
Only one of us is excited to talk about this thing.
Well, I'm very excited to talk about it.
Ugh.
All right. How did you feel? What are our impressions, our opinions?
How did you feel? Because I feel like I've been trying to ask you how you felt, and you've just been hitting me with roundabout. What? You'll see.
Yeah, well, I wanted to save this all for right now. Um,
Well, I'm excited, and I want to know how you felt.
well, this movie, we've had trouble not talking about it before now because we have so much to say. There's a lot to talk about here.
There is.
I,
I've seen it twice,
yeah,
and so
well, would you say it has rewatchability then if you've seen it twice within what, 1 week?
within 2 days, I've seen
Yeah.
it twice.
Okay. Well, then surely it's rewatchable.
That is true. It is rewatchable, and it's watchable. Like you can watch this movie. It is egregiously bad, but you can enjoy it, and it's not so bad that it's good. It's just incredibly mediocre and fails to do anything original, fails to make any smart commentary, and that's why I find this movie frustrating. It's just mediocre,
Yeah.
but you can watch it.
Yeah, I think mediocre is, yeah, that's a good, it's, you can, there's some good kills. It's a fun watch, sure, maybe. But I wouldn't say it's good. First
Yeah,
of
I wouldn't
all,
either.
absolutely ripping off the Halloween 2018 formula.
Dude,
Like
but isn't
shameless.
everybody?
Everybody is, but I feel like this is the most blatant example.
Yeah, that's true, right? I think so. If you don't know what formula we're talking about, we are talking about taking the first film in a franchise and then making a direct sequel, retconning all the other ones. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of those franchises. I've only ever seen, full disclosure, the first one and this one. But it's one of those franchises that has, I think it has 8 sequels, not including this one. And I could be wrong on that. But this movie is the direct sequel to the first film. It retcons every other movie, just like Halloween 2018 did. Um, I don't know. We haven't watched the new Scream, and I know that the new Scream also kind of uses that formula in that it's a direct sequel where old characters come back with a vengeance, right? Like Sidney Prescott comes back and she's ready to end this once and for all. They do a similar thing in this movie by bringing back a character from the first film. The problem with that is that in the first movie, you don't really care about this character. It's not the same as Halloween, where you follow Laurie Strode the whole time and you're rooting for her the whole time, or even Scream for that matter. The first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you have an ensemble of 5 characters, and I don't really think she was an interesting, like, final girl with a lot of personality in the first movie. So already that doesn't work. So there's another cast of characters, including the old character from the first film, in this movie that you're following. So our focus is split right out of the gate in this movie.
Yeah, it's shameless and it really doesn't work. So Halloween 2018, it also was very like boldly declaring itself as like the remake, the definitive sequel by naming itself Halloween. And that's why we refer to it as Halloween 2018. Really bold to name yourself after the original movie that made this franchise a franchise. And
Right.
this movie named itself Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. The original is called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But they're doing the same thing here where it's like, this is the sequel. We are back. We're loud and proud about it. And to be so bold as to name yourself that and then be a pretty mediocre film that really does not hold a candle to the original. That's a big flop.
Well, and what's funny is that this is actually the exact same thing that Fede Alvarez, the writer or one of the writers of this movie, did with Evil Dead, where the first movie is called The Evil Dead, of course, and he made a reboot where he dropped the and it just called it Evil Dead. That is a really successful reboot. You know how I feel about that movie.
It's a
I like it a
fantastic
lot.
movie. Yeah, I love the
Yeah,
movie.
I like it a lot. I think the gore is great. I think the writing is fine for what it is, but it's a fun movie. This doesn't have nearly as strong of a script, not nearly as strong of a premise, cast, characters. It's rougher. So like he does this, right? He's known for doing this, rebooting and I also it's worth noting that Alvarez has talked about how he would like to do bigger franchises. So this is very much him having those dreams come to fruition. It's a shame that it falls so freaking flat on its face.
It really does. So that's another thing. It's okay. Halloween 2018 is not like the end all be all movie, but the parts that matter are good. You know,
Yeah.
Michael Myers is freaking great in that movie. In
Yeah.
this movie, it feels like it could be a decent movie like that. Like it almost could be. And then they make so many poor decisions that
Yeah.
throw it off. And it feels like these problems could have easily been avoided, could have easily been changed, but they didn't do that. So this movie is like just not nearly as good as it could be.
No, it's not. And I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it, right? Like when you're watching this movie, it almost feels like you are watching, and I don't mean this to sound mean, but it's going to, but it's like what not to do when making a reboot. And there are tons of reboots of horror movies. This is a common thing. We're comparing everything to Halloween 2018 because uh, it's unique in that it retcons a bunch of movies and calls itself the definitive sequel. And a lot of the modern iterations of horror movie franchises are doing the same thing now because of that. Um, but again, this is a pretty successful franchise that has spawned tens of sequels, and I'm exaggerating there, but many sequels. And I just feel like this movie was made for nobody, not the fans of the original 3 or 4 movies, not the outsiders that are coming into this franchise hoping to maybe get hooked in. I don't know who this movie was made for. It just doesn't have any of the bite of the first movie. It's not as interesting as the first movie. And mind you, I'm not even a fan of that first movie. But it also doesn't have any of the bells and whistles that a lot of modern slashers are bringing into the genre. There's no clever camera work. The one attempt that they make at a cool shot, and we can talk about that door shot later, is pretty poorly done. There's like maybe 2 shots in the whole movie that I thought were visually interesting at all. It's just very cut and dry. Here it is. There's also not really an interesting portrayal of Leatherface. In fact, and I have basic knowledge of the other movies. I feel like this might be one of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies that goes into Leatherface the least. I mean, they don't explore him at all as a character. There's no look into the inner workings of Leatherface, into his motives, into anything, really. You get a 10-minute interaction with his mother, and then the rest, you don't explore that character at all. You just watch him kill people.
No, I agree. I think you sum it up pretty good when you say this movie seems to be for no one. It diverges so much from the original. Like, the original isn't exactly, it isn't really a traditional slasher. You know, in a traditional slasher, like in this movie, there's one big freaky monster who's the face of a franchise, chasing a group of youngins, picking them off one by one. That's what this movie is. That's what most slashers are, but the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not like that. It's they show up to the like near this horrific hell house of these demented, probably inbred, like cannibal people, and the grotesque, disturbing way that these people live is where the horror derives from. It's not that there's a guy chasing you with a knife. It's that
Right.
they make lamps out of heads and like really mess with these people and torment them and like have human skin furniture and crazy stuff like that.
Right.
Disturbing things like that. It felt like that movie was trying to disturb you. And this movie's not like that. It's just Leatherface chasing people. It's just a slasher. There's none of that same sort of horror that the original has. And so that's
Yeah,
why this movie's not for anyone of the original franchise. And then as a slasher, it's not as effective as other slasher movies.
not at all. And uh for one, the lore here is kind of hard to follow. There's a lot that's left to the imagination because if my memory serves me right, and again, I will be 100% honest, I don't like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre very much. I know that's kind of sacrilegious.
No, I
And
agree with you. It's not my favorite.
yeah, and I also understand that it is important to the horror genre and it's important to the origin of slashers, American slashers.
Yeah, no, with all due
Um,
respect, but it's not my favorite.
right, right. I don't find it very interesting. Um, but if you're looking for a faithful sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, this one's a little weird because, like I said, there's a lot left to the imagination. This takes place almost 50 years after the original movie. And I guess we're supposed to gather that Leatherface, after the events of the first movie, somehow ended up in an orphanage in a small town, a little far away from, or, I don't know, a town over from where the events of the first movie took place. Um, so already, right, none of this is actually said. Already, you're supposed to just gather this from the beginning. I found myself pretty confused as to what Harlow is. That's the name of the town that this movie takes place in. Um, you know, is this actually Leatherface that we're seeing? What is his relation to this random woman? Because there was no mother in the first movie, I don't believe. They're just throwing a lot at you early on, and I respect it because it does. I will say this movie is mightily paced. It's paced really well. You get into it quick. However, there's just a lot left to the imagination here. There's a lot of conclusions that you have to draw while watching.
The circumstances for this movie are really, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of things left unanswered. It makes it feel like, okay, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the sequel from the first one, but then it really has nothing to do with the first one. Like you said, I don't even know if this is the same Leatherface because it doesn't really make sense for him to be here. He gave up his
Yeah.
cannibal ways, left his. I don't know. I like to imagine maybe he lived with his family and his mother lived separately in this town, and after the events of the first movie, he moved in with her. But why and how? And I don't know. And then he doesn't kill. He's like basically docile for all these
Right.
years until this movie. But why? Like why? you know? It doesn't make any sense, this movie.
Now, we've talked about the beginning, but we need to talk about both the characters in this movie and what sets the killing spree in this movie in motion. Because that is where this movie lost me as a fan, as a potential fan, I should say.
Yeah, okay.
Um, so again, we open up on the town of Harlow, and there is a young cast of characters, most of them millennials, one of them a teenager, moving their way into this small southern town. And right from the beginning, we're introduced to what is it? Those four characters. There's Melody, who is her character description is a San Francisco moneymaker who drags her sister to Texas on a business trip.
Is she from San Francisco?
Supposedly,
I was picking up
supposedly.
that they were all from Austin.
I was too, but that's the character description online.
Okay.
Nonetheless, they probably moved into Austin
They
from
mention
San
Austin
Francisco.
like living in Austin at a certain point.
They do, they do. And they're definitely going for the Austin folk thing.
Yeah.
But then there's Lila. She is a school shooting survivor. And I don't know about you.
Wow.
But the first 5 seconds of this movie, when we get introduced to her, she is on Instagram. She passes a picture that shows a person with their hands up saying, "Don't shoot." And then she covers a scar that's on her chest that is a hole, or it's in the shape of a hole. So, of course, we know immediately, okay, she survived a school shooting. Now, you could say, oh, my compliments to them for having strong visual storytelling and for, being able to show us that without telling us that. But what proceeds after that one moment is just the most on-the-nose visual storytelling I've seen in any movie in a long time. But that's neither here nor there. We meet Ruth, who is an investor as well, and she is there with Dante, who is a chef out of Austin. He
He's a
operates
chef?
out of yes, he's a chef that operates a food truck out of Austin, who is also looking to invest in this community. What they are doing is they are buying property that is cheap because this town has since basically just run amok and nobody lives there anymore. And so they are essentially gentrifying. And that's what the movie says. They get called gentrifiers early on in the film.
Yeah. So there's this theme of gentrification going on in this movie. First of all, I could not understand what they were doing. They keep saying they're investors, and then they get to the town and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is where we live now." I think at one point she says we can put a comic book shop right there, and I was like, "Did they buy the entire town?" Because that's what they
Right.
kind of make it seem like.
Yeah, it seems like they did. What I
They
think the movie wants you to believe is that these really unlikable, not skilled millennials somehow roll up in their Tesla to this entire town that they bought.
Oh man, in the Tesla.
Yeah,
We're gonna get into the
and
Tesla.
what's crazy is that the Tesla is actually very important at a certain
This
point in the movie, which I think is hilarious.
product placement is crazy. Whatever. Sorry, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. But yeah, they bought the whole town, and they are waiting for investors to come and invest in the community and basically start a new utopia here in Harlow, Texas. And that's their words, not mine. I think she says at one point, Ruth says, "We're idealistic individuals trying to build a better society."
She
it's
does say that, yeah.
Okay. We also meet very early on this character named Richter,
Oh
which
man,
is just
Richter.
a ridiculous name. And probably, in my opinion, is the most likable character in this entire movie.
Oh, he's definitely, but also he's not. He doesn't exist. He's a walking conundrum. He's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's this character that he is from Harlow, it seems, grew up in this community, and he likes guns. And immediately in the beginning of the movie, the characters claim that he has a small penis because he's carrying a gun on his hip. And that's like the inciting conflict between Richter and this group of millennials, specifically Melody, who is the older sister of Lila. And we follow Melody and Lila throughout a majority of this movie, but Richter does play a core part in everything.
Yeah, and can I talk about that scene at the very beginning?
Please.
They are stopping at a gas station. It's very classic beginning of a slasher. This guy pulls up in his big, huge red truck that's like spewing gas, and he's got this gun on his hilt. And this girl literally like tells him he has a small penis, and then he's like, "Excuse me, ma'am, we have a hog problem." We have a feral hog problem. I was like, do you kill hogs with a pistol? You
Hey,
walk
I
around
mean,
with strapped in case you see a hog? Like, what
probably,
was that logic?
dude. No, probably though.
Dude,
Like,
wear it on your if you just want to like have a gun, because like that's clearly what he does. Then just say that. Like,
oh,
don't
that's
have a
true
gun
too.
and then be embarrassed that you have a gun, so you have to make up a lie about hogs. You
I
wouldn't have a
agree with you,
pistol. You would have like a shotgun in your truck or something.
but that line, okay, specifically, he says, "Feral hogs are an invasive species, and the only way to deal with an invasive species is to eradicate them on sight." It's a metaphor for the
Yeah,
gentrifiers
for he
coming into
hates
his
these. Yeah,
community.
it's not subtle, but the
No, it's
freaking
really, again,
hogs.
this is not subtle. However, come on, right? Like, they're
Yeah.
coming into his town. He is from here. It's not really their business if he's carrying a gun. And she just felt the need
Oh
to
no,
speak, to speak her mind,
no,
even
I agree.
though
They suck.
he's he's well within his right, and like he lives there. You know what I'm saying? So, what is this? The first 5 minutes of the
No,
movie?
she antagonizes him like immediately. Like he gets out and just starts filling his car up, and she's like, "You have a small penis," and it's like,
Yeah,
"All right, damn."
yeah. And then he hits her with a what, you've never seen a man with a big gun before? And then there's like a clever exchange that I did like, where she rolls down the window and she says, "I've seen bigger." I liked it. I thought it was
I
cheeky and funny.
glad.
I mean, hey, I have to give this movie some credit, right? If not,
Sure,
I'll just be tearing into it the
I'll
whole
give this
time.
movie more credit than you. I think by the end of the
You
day.
might. You might.
Okay, well, I want
So,
to talk about
oh,
the town of Harlow.
yes, please, please go into it.
So the town of Harlow, this movie cannot decide what it is. Is it a ghost town or isn't it? No one lives there. Every building is abandoned. They start going through the buildings, like looking through everything, and the only I think we run into exactly 5 people that live in Harlow. 6 if you include the old man who runs the gas station outside of town. There's our redneck friend Richter, who works in a garage. He owns like a garage where he works on his own car because there's nobody else there because it's an abandoned ghost town. And then next door is Leatherface and his mother. And then there are 2 cops. And that's it. That's everyone who lives there. There's nobody else. Every other building looks abandoned. And still Richter acts like he doesn't know who Leatherface or Leatherface's mother is. Like they see her at one point and he refers to her as like that old lady over there. Like he doesn't know these people. But there's 5 people that live in town. Like, is it abandoned or isn't it? The movie cannot decide.
Yeah,
They
that's true. Because they're also like clearly displacing people.
yeah, like that's the theme of like it's being gentrified, but like if it's an abandoned ghost town, then who are they gentrifying? There's no one there. At one point, they go into the theater, like as they're running away from Leatherface, the like local movie theater, and it's destroyed. There's a pool of water taken out. There's a huge hole in the roof and the floor, and like plants are growing in it. Like it's an abandoned town, except for these 5 characters. And then they're like, "Well, they're gentrifying it," but I mean, I don't know. This movie can't decide.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, it's just not very clear what they wanted to do here. I guess they just needed a setup for Leatherface. But my thing is that why did it need to be this? Right? Like, why did we have to make up a new town and have him in an orphanage? Why couldn't they have just bought the home that the first movie takes place in? We literally could have cut the cast in half, made it a young Austin couple that wants to buy a bunch of property up in rural Texas. They go to this house, and then the events of the movie ensue.
I think the reasoning was that like the original house got busted after uh Sally Hardesty from the first movie escaped. Like she got the cops to come and raid the place. And that's why he can't be in that house, but I don't like yeah, there's a million other things they could have done in this bizarre setup. It doesn't
Yeah, but
make any sense.
you're already ripping off Halloween. Why not just have him return to the house?
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later, I guess.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and then this whole like they're gentrifying it. They bought an entire town. Like they just bought a town. He works in a truck stop and then he bought a town, a whole town.
Right.
What is going on here? And then they have an auction later where a bunch of other millennials show up in a party bus and they start, I guess, buying buildings. It's like an auction where they're just calling out numbers and people are one-upping each other, and I'm not even sure what they're buying or selling or why they're there. I mean, they want to create a new community there, but I was so confused about this the whole movie because it doesn't make a lick of sense. It does not remotely make sense.
It doesn't, and fortunately, it really doesn't matter for too long. There is one scene that I want to talk about just before we move into Leatherface and like the killing spree. When they first get there, and I guess this is important because it's what sets everything in motion. Dante, who is the food truck owning chef from Austin, he sees a Confederate flag up on a building, and he says, "Whoa, man, we got to take that down. If our investors see it, they're not going to buy." Which, like, I would think that the investors know where they're buying.
Yeah, like it's rural Texas, King. You
Like,
gotta, you gotta
like,
get real.
come on, man. You know what's going on out here.
The name of the road's probably like Dixie Street,
Right,
Confederate
right.
Lane. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I've seen several of those.
Yeah.
In suburbs. So, like,
yeah.
are you really shocked? Anyway, but he's upset about the Confederate flag. He walks into the building where the Confederate flag is, like he owns the place, because I guess he kind of does.
He thinks he does, at least.
Right. And he reaches through outside the window trying to get it down, but he can't grab it. This is where we meet Ginny is what they call her. I think her full name is Virginia. And now I know she's not related to Leatherface because her last name is McCumber. And that is not the name of the boys in the first movie. That's not their last name. So there's no blood relation here. She is clearly a foster mom of sorts to Leatherface. But anyway, she's an old lady. She's got an oxygen tank. And she starts telling him, "Oh, I don't have any problems with you folk. I just fly the flag because it was my great granddaddy's. Heritage, not hate," that kind of thing. And he gets pissed off. He storms out. They tell her that she has to leave because they own the place now. And she claims, "No, you don't. I settled my dispute with the bank and I have ownership to this building." Well, they force her out anyway. She has a heart attack. There's no ambulance in this community. They put her in like a cop car with her boy.
With these two cops also
Right.
that we've been introduced to.
Right. They're listed as Deputy and Herb.
Nice.
Yeah, these two cops load her up in a van like she is a piece of meat. They get in the van with her one remaining adopted son, who we presume is Leatherface. And then on the way out, she dies. So Melody, who is, again, one of these investors, and she's basically one half of our main characters here because the two that they really focus on is Melody and Lila. Melody starts digging through the documents in the house. How she finds these, I don't know. And she learns that they did indeed settle the dispute with the bank, and that this woman that just died due to, grief and shock of losing her home was wrongfully kicked out of her home. She did have a deed to the property. And, of course, Leatherface is going to seek revenge because the gentrifiers killed her.
His mother died, and now he's ballistic, yeah.
Right, and we've seen that before, of course, in a pretty famous slasher franchise.
Yeah. Once again, not really original. So, this woman, too, like, okay, she's got a Confederate flag, and, I understand the immediate wariness, I guess, of this character, but they break into her house. They just walk right into her house. Go up to her bedroom. Go into her bedroom. Start trying to get this flag. And then she like finds them in her house and is like, "What are y'all doing here?" And they're like, "Oh, we thought this place was abandoned." And then she makes them tea. She makes them sweet tea immediately. She
Yeah,
doesn't freak
she
out. Like she's being very nice.
that's true. She offers them sweet tea, and they're just like immediately, "You're a racist, and also your house is ours."
Yeah, they say you're racist. Get out. We're evicting you. Like after she made them tea, and I was like, "Damn, cold."
Again, she is probably 80,
Yeah,
has an oxygen tank, and also does actually have a deed to this house.
no,
They
you
were
gotta let that old
assuming,
woman lie.
yeah, they were assuming she didn't. So Melody feels a massive amount of guilt about this death. She learns from a text message from Ruth, who actually rode along with the cops when they were transporting Virginia, that Virginia died on the way there. And when Melody tells Dante, he says, "Oh, we didn't kill her, though. We're not responsible. That was just heart disease." He feels nothing about the fact that the grief that they caused this woman potentially killed her. Feels
Killed a woman with
absolutely nothing.
grief unjustly. Yeah, and he does not care.
Right. So, again, and this may be on purpose, but this is maybe like the first 30 minutes of the movie. You don't like any of these characters. They're just not likable people. I don't know.
With most slashers, there's always one character you kind of like who typically is the final girl, and then a bunch of characters that are you don't like. They're just unlikable. They're jerks usually. But that's as bad as it is. Like they're just jerks. They're assholes. This guy, like, they killed an old woman by making her so upset when they evicted her. Like they were just like ruthless. Like
Right.
it was
Right.
really excessive.
And there is Lila, and she like I said is the girl that has survived a school shooting. But it's the most ham-fisted way to make you like a character, right? Like by association, you already don't love her because she's with these people that are invading this community and have basically killed an innocent old woman. And I guess they just like wrote a tragic backstory so that you would be most sympathetic for her.
Yeah.
But she barely has any lines or any character development outside of the fact that we know that she has been affected by gun violence.
Yeah, especially at the beginning of this movie, they're developing all these characters that are inevitably going to get killed off. And then this girl who you kind of like, who's clearly going to be the final girl, gets the least amount of development and screen time. And she's
Yeah.
the one that's going to stick around the longest.
Yeah. And that's where I think both of us, that's why we're saying this movie's confused. You've given us a cast of characters to follow. None of them are likable. There is the seemingly unlikable Southern character that carries a gun, but he honestly hasn't really done anything wrong. He's actually very nice to Lila. Oh, and then, of course, all the investors are just like these NPC, inhuman characters. So you don't really care about any of them either when they come in on the bus to the town. There's just nobody to care about here, is the truth of the matter. And you can't even really care about Leatherface because his development is half baked. And the sad thing is that we haven't even mentioned Sally Hardesty, who is a protagonist in this movie, and she also doesn't get any development.
Yeah,
And she doesn't
wow.
have and she doesn't have any development in the first movie either. She's just the girl that escapes.
And so that is like, that begs the question, why bring her back?
God, and now that I'm thinking about it, like this movie really sucks. Like because there just is nothing again, who is this for? Why were these characters placed here? Did you want this to be a revenge movie with Sally from the first film? Okay, well, we don't quite get that. Did you want this to be a movie about, young millennials that are gentrifying, but they learn a lesson somehow in the end? We don't really get that either. Did you want this to be a movie where you root for the killer? I guess you kind of succeeded in that, but also he's the least interesting in this movie. I would say.
Yeah, than in any other movie he's been in.
Right.
At least, that I can speak to, or that
So
what I've seen.
Yeah, so we don't really get that either. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it makes no sense. They do this really terribly, I think, in the more recent Halloween movies. like the one that just came out last year, where they
Yeah.
try to invent legacy characters out of characters that you never cared about or were not important, with Sally Hardesty in this movie. And it's half baked, thrown in at the very end of the movie. Um, is really jarring. All of a sudden, this school shooter premise, this school shooter like backstory that Lila has, is it's not on the nose. It breaks your nose. It is so ridiculous. It's so, oh my god, it's ham-fisted as hell. And then they try to like make these characters horrible, do horrible things, kill this old woman. So when Leatherface starts killing, it's as if they want it to be justified. Like at by that point in the movie, Leatherface truly is not the villain. Like you really are rooting for him. Like it just makes sense. It's as if the story is telling itself from a perspective that makes Leatherface a sympathetic character, one that you're like supposed to root for. And then I'll just say it, he cuts off that woman's face and wears it for the rest of the movie. And I'm sorry, but I can't really sympathize with someone wearing another person's face. You don't care at a certain point. You're like, okay, well, he's pretty dehumanized at this point. I really can't see eye to eye with him.
Yeah. He cuts off her face and wears it. Now, the way that the movie frames that action is like he does it as like an homage to her. Early on in the movie, she says, well, if I knew people were coming over, I would have put my face on.
Oh my god, yeah. And how not subtle was that too?
Right. Not subtle, but then later on, when he's back in the orphanage after he's been wearing her face for some time, do you notice that he puts on her makeup for her?
Yes, I do. And
so it came from a place of love.
Yeah. This movie.
Yeah. Now that sequence in the car, so let's set this up, right?
Yeah.
Ginny is in the car with Leatherface. I guess we don't know his real name ever, but they call him like Bubba in one of the movies. But she's in the car with Leatherface. There's a cop in the back. There's a cop driving, and then there's Ruth in the front seat, joining them, I guess because she's empathetic all of a sudden. Well, when Ginny dies, the cop very insensitively says, "Sheriff, she croaked." Yeah. This probably doesn't make Leatherface happy. He starts messing with her oxygen tank to see if like maybe raising the oxygen levels brings her back. And he's like rattling the tank. And then I guess the cop thinks it's an appropriate time to be annoyed. And he grabs Leatherface's hand as if to say, "You're making a lot of noise. Chill out." Even though his mother just died. So Leatherface, in what is one of the worst CG shots I've seen in a while, just lightly, daintily lifts the cop's wrist and breaks it in half. And then he finishes off the kill by taking that broken wrist bone and shoving it into his jugular. And that's our first kill of the movie. The cop tries to pull a gun on him, and Leatherface smashes the hand into the ceiling of the van. And that bullet, of course, magically hits the sheriff who is driving, and they crash into a big tractor in the middle of a sunflower field, leaving only Ruth and Leatherface in the van alive. This is maybe, even with the bad CG, the strongest sequence in the movie.
I completely agree, yeah.
Like, it's when we see Leatherface cut off Ginny's face and wear it. We see him make very quick work of two cops. And they're pretty interesting kills. And then we have a suspenseful moment with Ruth in the front of the van, trying desperately to be very quiet while she radios for help. And Leatherface, us knowing that he's going to get her eventually, just wondering how. That is the tightest sequence in the whole film. Also, the shot of Leatherface peeking over the sunflowers.
Oh, dude, right?
Gorgeous.
I think it's a great shot. Yeah. It's this field of sunflowers, and then you see him like poke his head up, and he's wearing this cut up face, and it's really scary. It's like, woo. That's easily the best shot of the movie, I'd say.
No, it's a great shot. I will say that the ecology of this Texan town is all sorts of messed up. It doesn't know if it wants to be a desert or a vast field of sunflowers.
It
Do
just wants.
sunflowers do well in the desert?
I have not seen any sunflower. I live exactly. They say this town is a few miles outside of Austin. I live a few miles outside of Austin. There are no sunflowers anywhere. Maybe this is a thing. I've not ever seen it.
This was filmed in Bulgaria.
Oh, well. In
It's
Bulgaria?
not. Yeah, this was filmed in Bulgaria.
No, I
But
didn't think it was filmed here, but
oh, I know. I'm just saying, like, it's not even close to anything we would have here.
yeah, no,
It's very odd. Other than the first one, Toby Hooper, proud Texan from Austin, did film it in Austin.
yes, and you believe it. You
Right.
recognize it if you're from here.
Right.
But yeah, this much like the town itself, the ecology is confused. This sequence is tight. You're right. I loved this sequence. I really tried to be on board with this film. I was really sticking with it. I was giving it a huge chance. And when this scene happened, I was back on, like, maybe I was a little straying because of these characters, but this scene happened and I was back on board. I was like, oh yeah, here we go.
Me too.
Because, the Halloween remakes, the recent ones, they have this problem of like, okay, the writing's kind of bad, the development of these characters is bad. You don't care about these characters as much as the movie wants you to. There's just problems with the characters. But then when it gets into the action, when Michael Myers is on screen, then it's a good movie. Good things are happening. It's very entertaining. And so I thought, okay, well, here we are. Now that the action's happening, now that Leatherface in action is, that's what we bought the ticket for. That's what we're here for. Now that that's going on, I'm back on board. I'm ready to see a good movie. And this is pretty promising. There's a few times in the movies I do agree where the CGI is a little off. But you can get over that pretty quickly. And I think that they cover it up pretty well. Like just in a quick shot or something,
You accept it eventually, but I do wonder, this movie, it's not, some small production. It's Legendary Pictures working with Netflix to distribute the film. I couldn't find anything on the budget. I don't know if you could.
I couldn't
I just
either.
feel
No, it was
like
weird.
I just feel like the effects were oddly bad. And I'm not saying that they were terrible. First of all, I never even heard this was being made.
I
And
was about
people
to ask
love
you.
this franchise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't hear a thing about this movie, and then suddenly the day it released, I like looked on Netflix and I was like, oh, there's a new movie.
Right? It was just out. And like we follow horror, and I feel like I would have known
Yeah, I
that this
didn't
was
hear a thing
being
about
made.
it.
And I'm a fan of the guy that wrote the movie. So I would think that I would have heard of it, but nope. I didn't hear anything about this movie. Maybe it's because it was being filmed during the pandemic. I guess that's possible. But I really don't know why it doesn't look very good. It just feels weird that it doesn't have a higher budget, or at least that the effects weren't akin to a movie with a higher budget, right?
Yeah, in 2022, I don't know. It wasn't terrible. Like, it certainly wasn't terrible.
It was not terrible, but I don't know. It just wasn't. It didn't seem like something to come out of a big franchise to me.
No, I agree. Well, after Ruth wakes up, actually, after this horrible crash into the tractor, that's when she looks in the rearview mirror. And this shot's decent. It's not like the most revolutionary, but it's at least different than what we see in the rest of the movie. You get what you assume is her perspective looking into the rearview mirror, seeing Leatherface turned away from the camera, defiling his mother's corpse. Oh, and then he lifts up the skin of her face, and you see him put it on, and that's pretty like, oh no, that's pretty scary. And Ruth slowly trying to radio for help, like he said, and Leatherface comes back because the cop in the front seat starts bubbling like blood. He kind of wakes back up and blood's gushing out of his neck hole, and he comes and like smashes him in the head with the oxygen tank, I believe. And,
Right.
and so Leatherface is like still active, still very intimidating, still freaking her out. and she begins to slowly like unbuckle her seatbelt. I think she like looks out the window, and then she leans back, and we see her turn around, and on the opposite side of the car is Leatherface staring at her through the window. And then and that's this is scary. It's an effective horror, so this sequence is good
Yeah.
too. And then we see him like grab her by the neck and just like cut her guts out, basically just put the knife into her, and that's it. And that's a pretty tame kill considering what we just saw. And after that, he goes
Yeah.
back to the town.
And I don't know, like you say he guts her. To me it seemed like a very shallow stomach laceration.
It was, but I think he kind of dragged the knife a little bit.
I guess. Kind of a lame kill after, like you said, an effective horror sequence.
After we just, I mean, I was okay with it. But we did just see him cut a woman's face off, so like, the
Right.
stakes were pretty high at that point. The bar
And
is high.
use a man's broken wrist to murder him.
Yeah, that's a high bar. So I guess I understand that the kills after this were not gonna be as good, but still, they get back to the town basically, and they're all in this old woman's house trying to find the deed. They find the deed in it. They find out the old woman died, and the party bus full of, I'll just say, quote unquote, investors. It's just like young millennials show up, and
Yeah, they're all 30
why
somethings.
why are they in a party bus? I don't know. They're setting up this auction, um but once again, it's like, what people are these? These don't exist. Who has like they show up and they have all this money and they are in a party bus, and like, who is this? What people are these? But whatever.
Yeah, so we don't really meet any of those investors in depth. We just see their faces and watch them party in the party bus, and we see them at the auction a little later. Um, but we do see Lila kind of creep away from the scene, and she goes to Richter's workshop. And this is a core moment in the movie, or so it would want you to think it's a core moment in the movie. Um, but she makes her way into his workshop and starts talking to him, and she says, just out of nowhere, why are you so nihilistic? Or like, why are you such a nihilist? And he's like, a what? Because he doesn't know what that word means. And she was like, well, anybody with a diesel truck that's murdering our planet surely has a pretty negative view of the world. And his response to this is just, I'm from Texas. I don't like being told what to do. Um, and so I guess this is their way of having us see these characters interact and see that they're at odds. But it's like mostly harmless. And then she sees on the table an AR-15. And mind you, she of course survived a school shooting. So she recoils, and he says, have you ever shot one before? And she says no. He puts it in her hand after unloading it safely. And she like has to throw it back on the table because she has a flashback and it freaks
No,
her
she
out.
like is aiming with it and then goes to pull the trigger, and she pulls the trigger and it just clicks because
That's
there's
right.
no ammo. So like, she's on board with shooting this gun, but when the trigger
Right.
clicks is when she has like a PTSD flashback. It's like, girl, what?
Yeah,
Why
like, why'd you even
now?
pick it up?
The gun
Yeah,
didn't set you off.
I know. And they start talking, and she vaguely brings up the fact that she was in a school shooting. He says, have you ever shot one before? And she says, no, I've been shot at. And he said, drunk dad? And she goes, Stonebrook High,
Yeah.
or whatever the name of the high school was. And he is sympathetic and obviously does not think that that's an okay thing. And we cut away, and we are left to believe that these two characters had a connection, right? That they are cool with each other now. A little later, Melody comes to check on Lila, and he's just casually chilling out upstairs in like the loft area of his workshop.
Yeah, when she sleeps
And
above the garage. Yeah.
right, and she's looking for her sister, and she finds her exiting the bathroom smoking a cigarette. And she's like, what are you doing here? And walks off in a huff because, of course, Melody does not like Richter. solely based off of one interaction in which she was the instigator of the negative energy. I do want to say this movie is painfully predictable, I
Oh yeah.
find. Because the minute she picks up that AR-15, you know that it's Chekhov's AR-15. In
Yeah.
fact, the minute I found out she was involved in a school shooting, I said, "Oh, she's gonna have to use a gun." By
Yeah.
by the end of this movie, that of course does happen. She tries to use a gun, but when they show the AR-15 specifically, you know what's gonna happen. It's not subtle. It's really poor writing. And you also immediately know that Richter is going to save Melody at some point. He's going to help Melody at some point because he's not a bad guy. And even though they're at odds, they're trying to do the whole thing. We're like, we're all human. We can look past our differences, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. It hurts.
It really does. Yeah. It's just lazy. It's so lazy. This movie. Okay, the original. Toby Hooper said the original is an allegory for the Vietnam War. And I think that's giving him a little too much credit. I don't know if you buy into that so much. That's what he says. I think it's more of just like he lived in a bleak time, was very disgruntled with the violence of the world at the time, and so made this just like nihilistic, to use Lila's word, nihilistically violent and just apathetic movie. And that's the spirit of the original movie. Like, that's the commentary, it feels like. So that at least does exist. There is that aspect. In this movie, so many times it feels like she was in a school shooting. Who's the real monster? They're gentrifying this town. They killed that old woman. Who's the real monster? And then cut to Leatherface wearing a woman's face, cutting people in half with a chainsaw. And it's like, no, Leatherface is the monster. He's killing people with a chainsaw. And it's so lazy, and it like offers this faux commentary of just like, these people are bad, but these people are also bad, and these people are different, but they can see eye to eye sometimes, and it's just so lazy. There's no good commentary. Nothing meaningful is said in this cheap slasher.
Yeah. No, I agree. I find that a big problem with a lot of horror movies today is that they want so desperately to say something because people connect to art that provides commentary on things that are happening. People connect to art that is timely. The problem is that no one, to my knowledge, maybe I'm talking out of my butt here, but like, I don't watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I'm hungering for political commentary. I just don't. It's not something I do. I don't look to my horror films always for political commentary. It's awesome when they do it well, but it's not something I'm actively seeking out. It's not something I expect of the genre, right? Um, and I think this movie tries so hard that it's difficult. It's the Room effect. Tommy Wiseau was writing for the Oscar. He really thought they had a chance, and that's what makes that movie so painful. And that's kind of what I felt while watching this. I was like, man, I think the writer thinks they're killing it. It's the same beef I had with Rubber, one of the movies that
Yeah.
we've covered earlier.
I feel like this movie's a little more hopeless, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it is also like they're doing this commentary of like, gentrifying rural areas is bad, but on the other hand, this is the same franchise where the rural Texans are inbred cannibals. So,
Right.
you can't have it both ways.
Exactly. Exactly. I guess let's get into when the main core characters start to die, like Dante
Yeah.
and stuff.
Leatherface comes back to the orphanage, and I think the next kill we get is Dante. We get him, I don't exactly remember why he enters the kitchen, and then Leatherface is there in the kitchen, and we get this shot from a swinging door in the kitchen. The door swings open, you see Leatherface over this man, It swings back so the door is closed and swings open again. And you see Leatherface chop him in the neck. It swings open again, and that guy's like crawling on the floor. And in
Yeah,
this shot, they were really like, look at this shot. We got this swinging door.
yeah, it was incredibly indulgent. And I couldn't tell if the video, if they had inserted a video of Leatherface and Dante like struggling behind an actual swinging door and then like inserted it, via CG, or if the door itself was CG and they placed that swinging door over the actual like struggle. I couldn't tell what they did. All I know is it looked like garbage. It was not good. It was not good. It felt like they were trying to replicate the same horror of the yard lights in Halloween 2018, where every time the lights come on because of the motion sensor, you see Michael Myers in a different state. But it had none of the horror, none of the chutzpah. It just, it could have been interesting, I suppose, but I don't know. It fell flat.
It really did. Well, it didn't really make sense, like, feasibly. And I guess that's why they CGI'd it. But the fact that they CGI'd it is like, well, they wanted this shot, but they were too lazy to have the shot actually make sense and actually work. So they were like, we'll just do two scenes and CGI a door over it. And the laziness there kind of makes it look worse, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Dante does have a pretty gnarly laceration on his face from a meat cleaver. You could see like his exposed teeth
Yeah, I thought he
and
got chopped in
tongue.
the neck. We find out he got a meat cleaver like through the cheek into the jaw.
Yeah, it looks okay, I guess. um, Lila sees this later on. She sees his body just kind of like laying on the street with this open gash, and her reaction is very lax. She's like, "Oh my god."
Which I know he's an asshole, but
Right.
damn, you know.
I guess she's seen worse, I guess. I don't
I
know.
guess, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that's what they were trying to say.
Well, that's
Um
another thing they do is they keep being like, this new tragedy's gonna get her through her trauma, and it's like I don't know about all that. Like
right, like this is still pretty bad.
further traumatizing a person is not gonna. And then I think they did this thing at the end where they were like, she found strength and being through it before, and it's like, I don't know, I don't know. I don't think this situation has helped her in any way.
Right, right. This is where I think the movie starts to get really interesting. Lila sees Dante outside. While that is happening, I believe that Melody is inside of the house hiding from Leatherface because she was in there with Dante. And she was looking for him when he was being attacked. So now Leatherface, of course, he's on a roll and he's looking for her, and she manages to hide under a bed. Now it's super silly, like it's a terrible hiding spot.
First, no,
And
first she hides in a closet and then
you're right,
under a bed.
you're right. The bed is like really just silly. I don't know why he Leatherface never thinks to look there. He never thinks to look there. But nonetheless, who comes to try to save Melody? It has to be Richter. And Richter's a big guy, he's tough. So after Dante is killed, he comes in. Does he come in with his gun drawn?
He is looking throughout the house. He found
I
Dante's
don't remember.
bleeding body downstairs, and he goes upstairs where Melody, who's under the bed, knows that Leatherface has gone behind the door and is ready to sneak attack, chop this man. And she wants to warn him, but if she does so, Leatherface will know she's under the bed. So this is quite the conundrum. So there's a mirror next to the bed. She sticks her foot out and slowly tries to move it. So that way Richter can see that behind the door is Leatherface.
And
But
I like that shot
I do
too.
too. I think like, oh, that showed
Yeah,
some ingenuity. That's different. You didn't expect that. Um,
yeah.
but it was a little too late, I guess. And Leatherface is a really big man, and there was a struggle, but after the struggle, sadly, Richter did not make it.
Now, what ensues in the struggle between Leatherface and Richter is one of the most like gut-wrenching shots in my opinion. Leatherface takes a hammer and just buckles in Richter's knee.
Oh yeah,
And
like snaps that leg in half.
yeah, that's a great shot. Like that felt visceral and it looked pretty good too. Richter backs Leatherface into a wall even after this happens, but Leatherface smacks his neck into a broken shard of glass from a window and he dies. And it sucks because he dies. We watch Leatherface, like in a celebratory fashion, bash his head into mush with a hammer. Um, but he's like maybe the only interesting character we had in this movie. And he dies after like one exchange. So that sucks. But Richter, just before bleeding out from the neck wound, extends his hand toward the bed where Melody is hiding. And he has some keys to a bus there. We didn't mention this earlier, but he took the keys to the party bus after he found out that they were responsible for Ginny's death. I don't understand the motivation for doing that. He just took them from them. It's not even incredibly important, and I don't think we should even get into it, but he extends his hand as if to say, okay, escape. And Leatherface leaves the room. She picks up the keys and tries her best to get out of there.
Yeah. Now, this movie, this Richter, okay, this scene where his leg gets snapped is brutal. The wrist bone kill is brutal. The skinning of the face is brutal. This movie's trying to be very violent, very gory. And I think the reason is because of how disturbing and gory the original was. That's how it's trying to live up to the legacy of the original, is just by being gory. But you got to do a little more than just be gory. And sometimes it's effective gore, sometimes it's not. Like in Evil Dead the 2013 remake, the gore is so over the top. There's so much of it, and it's very visceral, very like initially maybe realistic looking, but there's so much of it that it is kind of like almost pulpy in the way the film is, just because it's
Right.
that like almost sensationalized, unrealistic amount of gore, almost like a Kill Bill amount of gore. In this movie, I don't know, it's trying to be realistic. It really feels like at the beginning it wants to be brutal but realistic, but then by the end of the movie it's like, no, you're just goofy. This is too much. So you've exceeded the amount of disturbing that my disbelief is no longer suspended, and it's less scary now. It's less impactful when you do see something horrible.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't even think most of it looks good.
Yeah,
Like
like we said,
it's
the
just
CG.
yeah, it's just not very good looking. Not real, not very real, I should say. There is a sequence shortly after Melody gets out of the house. And I'm not even mentioning the poop pipe. I feel like we should probably get into that first.
Oh please, can we get into that?
Yeah, let's talk about the poop pipe
Okay.
before we talk about the bus.
So Melody starts tiptoeing downstairs. She's escaping. She's gotten downstairs and she turns around and looks up, and at the top of the staircase is Leatherface. Uh he's got that hammer in his hand, and I do like that he does this, and he throws that hammer, smacks her in the chest, and puts her in the floor. I feel like slashers never throw things, and so I didn't expect it. I expected him to chase her, but he threw that hammer, and I was like, whoa, I didn't expect it. Before his
Yeah,
mother died, she said, stay out of my room, be a good boy. And we didn't know what that means. The reason he was in her bedroom in the first place was he had this hammer and he was breaking down a wall. And I expected there to be some moldering corpse in this wall, something like truly disturbing. But what was in that wall was his chainsaw. I don't
the
know why it
Texas
was.
chainsaw
Yeah, the Texas chainsaw.
with which he massacred.
Yes. I don't understand why there was just a chainsaw in the wall. Why did this have to be the way he gets a chainsaw? Like, it could have just been any old chainsaw. It did not have to be his specific chainsaw. I
I don't
don't
know. Maybe
understand.
that's what the fans wanted to see.
The fans didn't care. In every single Friday the 13th, Jason just finds a machete laying around because you can
That's
just find
true.
a machete. He doesn't have a special machete. Why would he
That's
care?
true. That's
So
very
this
true.
was dumb. Why would you put it in a wall? Dumb, dumb, dumb plot. But he gets
Yeah,
his
it was
chainsaw
pretty
after that,
stupid.
at least.
Yeah, he gets his chainsaw, and Melody, who just had a hammer thrown at her chest, falls through the floor from the force of the hammer. And there's a, I guess, fine like chase sequence where she's crawling under the floorboards and he's using the chainsaw to chase her through the floorboards with it,
Yeah,
right? Kind of
but
like a shark's dorsal fin, right? But
yeah,
it's a
and
chainsaw blade.
he's she's like fine despite being hammered through the floor, you know?
Yeah, not even a bruise.
And that's what I mean by like the inconsistency of the damage. Like sometimes it's really realistic, really brutal, and then other times these characters are invincible.
Like, oh, dude, whenever we get to Sally Hardesty.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as he is dragging his chainsaw through the floor, because remember, she's under the floorboards, she's about to make her way out, and he hits a pipe in the ground, or just under the
A
floor.
septic pipe.
Yeah, and a bunch of poop plops on her head
A
as she
pipe of
escapes.
poop
It
dumps
was a
on
poop
her
pipe,
head. She
and
literally gets shit on.
yes, and there's no reason for it, like other than to say ew, I guess. It's so dumb. And then like throughout the rest of the movie, it doesn't even look like she's covered in poop. She leaves, and then shortly after, like, she doesn't look poopy at all, even though she just got smothered in poop.
She got, like, when we say dumped, we mean like a pipe full of solid shit
Viscous poop, yeah.
dumped on her head. And she like doesn't even really react to it. Like she doesn't scream or anything. If that happened, you would throw up and possibly faint, I feel like. But she doesn't even care. And
No,
then she
not at
just
all.
escapes and runs away with she finds her sister and they start running down the street after
Maybe
this.
she's German. I'm sorry, we can cut that.
No, it's staying. Um this is for me where I forgave this character. I was like, okay, I don't hate her anymore. She got her comeuppance. She got a shit pipe dumped on her. It's okay. She deserves to survive now. It's okay. I forgive her. She had her comeuppance.
Yeah, I guess. She's not like the least likable character in this movie. She feels something when the old lady dies, so I can buy it.
Yeah.
At this point, I just wanted the movie to end.
Yeah.
However, if the movie had ended there, I wouldn't have gotten two of the most ridiculous sequences I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, these next sequences are where this movie hard lost me, where I
Yeah.
absolutely was no longer on board. This is where I got
So
off the train.
Melody sprints into a bus, and she again covered in poop.
Yeah, her and her
Lila
sister.
is yeah, she's right behind her. They rush in and they're like, "Drive, drive, drive!" Well, they do get in the bus, and the bus does start to drive.
Well, wait. Okay, first of all, I want to before this happens. Meanwhile, they're running back to the bus. There's this other woman who her name is Catherine. It looks like in the cast list. I don't even think they name her. She's just like this, I guess, organizing the auction and these people being here. She comes out and sees Dante, who has miraculously, after bleeding on the floor, woke up and started stumbling down the street, and she finds him like chopped
Oh, you're
up.
right. I
She
forgot
finds her
about that.
face. Yeah, she finds his face like chopped up, and she's just kind of like, "Oh, that's crazy." She runs back to the bus and is like, "You should shut the door," and is like really not freaked out by it. Uh, like by seeing this man's face get chopped up.
I mean,
Um,
I think she was supposed to be, but I think that she's a bad actress.
yeah, probably is true.
um,
And this is when all the characters are now on the bus.
right. And now they're all there. The bus starts to move, but then I don't know if it's that the bus driver runs something over or he sees something, but he just decides to stop and go check it out. And of course, the three of them, the one new character we just met that saw Dante dead on the ground, and then Lila and Melody are like, no, why are you stopping? The bus driver is out of the bus for like 5 seconds.
Not even, yeah.
Yeah, and his head just gets thrown back into the bus.
Yeah.
You hear a very faint chainsaw noise.
Yeah, as if it's like 3 miles away, yeah.
Right. And then boom, you got a head just thrown into the doorway. It's an average looking CG head, I guess. And then Leatherface makes his way onto the bus. Now, mind you, there are 3 people on this bus who have just seen horrific things. One of them covered in feces. And nobody has stopped to pay attention to them.
Yeah,
all the other people on this bus are partying and drinking.
And
still.
I understand maybe they have loud music and all. Surely you heard the man getting his head removed with a chainsaw that happened next to the bus. Surely you heard that. I don't care
guess
how
not.
loud the music is. Yeah, nobody's phased. You would notice if a woman with this much feces all over her body entered a room. You would smell it. You would know that she's had a literal sewer dumped on her. But nobody reacts. And then this woman too, like, instead of shutting the door as quickly as she can and maybe driving away, is just kind of like wide-eyed and starts backing up into the party zone of this bus as no one stops Leatherface as he gets on the bus and goes back into the into the party.
Here's where we see some really scathing commentary. Leatherface approaches a large gaggle of people. They're all drinking and have a good time. They stare at him. One of the characters says, "Get a load of this freak show." And as Leatherface stares them all down, mind you, these 3 women who, again, have just seen horrific things are saying nothing. They are frozen in fear, I suppose. All these influencers, these millennial people that are on this bus, their first instinct when they see a man wearing human skin on his face
holding a chainsaw
and holding
in
a chainsaw covered, their instinct is to pull out their phones. And the main guy, this guy will be cast in something else soon, I can promise you. He was like the millennial that they kept focusing in on.
Yeah.
He says, "Try anything, bro, and you're totally canceled." And Leatherface kills them all.
And they're like all got like live streaming it on TikTok. They all whip their phones out.
Or it's like Instagram Live or whatever.
Generic app. It's the dumbest thing I have ever seen.
It's so bad.
Wow, this is where I was off the board of this movie.
It's so bad. And that
so
line is so bad. And believe me, we know what you're trying to say. It didn't go over our heads.
Oh, man.
It's just poorly done and stupid.
Wow. Once again, I'm bleeding from my nose. It's been smacked so hard by this movie.
Yeah. He does kill them in pretty grandiose fashion. It's like pretty fine gore. It's pretty fun. People are pounding on the windows.
See, I didn't like this. I didn't even like this.
Oh, I thought it was fine. I like the lighting.
I did not. I love that. I like the lighting.
Well, I liked, he's killing them and it's juxtaposed with like the gritty nature of what's going on is juxtaposed with like techno music and like fun house lighting.
Yeah.
I thought that was fine.
Let me tell you what I don't like about it. First of all, I don't even like to see Leatherface in this setting. You don't want to see, this is why Jason Takes Manhattan isn't nearly as successful as it should be. You don't want to see Leatherface not in some Dead by Daylight map. Like he's on a party bus. It's like it's got club lighting. I don't want to see Leatherface in the club. I want to see.
I liked that.
It felt weird. And then the first kill, it's literally you get it from the perspective of this man's phone, and you see like the live chat, like commenting as you see Leatherface stick the chainsaw in his gut, and like the chat is commenting. It looks so dumb. So
no, that's what someone comments. They're like, "Oh, this looks so fake."
It's so dumb. It's so stupid. It's so ridiculously stupid. And this is a whole bus full of people, but not only that, it's like a crowded bus full of people because they're like shoulder to shoulder club bus, and nobody does a thing to stop Leatherface. They just kind of sit and scream. And there's like easily 25 people. Surely, if you are backed in a corner with 25 other people, like he's just one man, you gotta try to do something. You can't just like scream there, and they all start like just banging on the window, like absolutely fruitlessly too, like not even hard, just kind of tapping on the window. Do something, do something. They just sit there and let him kill them. They don't try to get past him. They don't do anything. And like while he's preoccupied killing one individual, nobody tries to run past him or anything, because like surely he can't kill all of them at the same time, and he doesn't. And they all just sit there and let him kill them.
Yeah.
And he kills all of them. He kills every single one.
None of them try anything. And maybe they're commenting on the fact that we're hopeless without our phones, or that I'm saying we. I don't know. It's trying to say something, and I just don't care. It's nauseating.
It's nauseating. And this girl that, Catherine, that was the like auctioneer lady, she like goes to one of the windows and just opens it and crawls out. Like it's like a very clearly just a sliding window, and she just opens it and crawls out. And he, as she gets halfway out, cuts her in half, and it's very like ooh, gory. And it's this is also this is where the gore is dumb and over the top, and disbelief is no longer suspended.
Right.
And it was also like you can just open these doors, and nobody else opened any of these windows. You can obviously open. I don't know. It's such a dumb. Like they're there to be slaughtered, like lambs to the slaughter, and they don't even try to not be that. It's so dumb. I hate this scene so much.
So as Melody and Lila make their way out of this stupid bus scene, we get yet another shockingly dumb choice by the writing team, in which, remember Sally Hardesty we mentioned her in the beginning of the movie and then showed a clip of her earlier in the film? Well, and now she's back, and she's here with a vengeance, and she's wearing a cowboy hat, and she's got a shotgun, and she's going to put an end to Leatherface once and for all. And she picks up Lila and Melody. Mind you, they just saw murder, and yet they're willing to hop into someone's car that they've never met.
I would be too. I mean, that's how the original ends. I feel like that's a nod to the original.
That's true. I guess.
Sally Hardesty in the original escapes Leatherface by flagging down some pickup truck and jumping into its trunk and being like, go. And then they zoom off. That's the end of the movie. And so here they're trying to escape. They find Sally Hardesty in her car. They jump into her car and they say, go. And here's the plot twist. She doesn't go.
She's there to kill him.
Which is so stupid, isn't it? They try to Laurie Strode this woman so hard.
They do. They really do. And it's like, okay, these characters were very close to getting away, and now they just like hopped in a car for nothing. She did, to be fair, she leaves the keys in the ignition for them and tells them to get out of there.
Well, not initially. When they first get in, it's like a police car, and they get in the back, so they're locked in because, like a police car would be. And she says, you gotta go. And she goes, no, he seems to be after you for some reason. I've got to stop him. And she locks them in the car and go. Why would she think he's after them? Why would she think they are special? She knows he's just a blind, savage killing machine. She has no reason to believe he's after them specifically. She has no reason to believe he's not just killing indiscriminately. Why does she need them there? She has a gun. So much stupidity in all of these decisions.
It's just, you don't care about her because, again, you didn't really care about her in the first movie. She just happens to be the one that escapes. And in this movie, she maybe has 5 minutes of screen time. Like maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. So there's just nothing here for you.
First, she finds him in his bedroom, I believe.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
She goes into the orphanage and finds him just kind of sitting on his bed in his bedroom, I guess, taking a breather after killing all those people. And she has this shotgun pointed at him. There's no way you can fail with this. But you know she's going to find a way. And she says, stand up and look at me. Do you remember me? I want you to say the names of my friends that you killed. And it's like doing this whole I need you to like feel bad before I kill you thing. But like she knows he is a mindless, dumb killing machine. There is no rationalizing this man. He's wearing a face. He's wearing a face. And she somehow like just can't bring herself to kill him until he's given her this like apology, I guess. And he just walks out of the room and she doesn't do anything about it. And then as he's in the street and now they're all fighting because it's this crazy climactic scene in the street, now she doesn't care and she's just shooting wildly. Now she does not care. It's so inconsistent and it's like, what?
Yeah.
What
And
is
then
the
of course
reason?
after 5 minutes of screen time, she gets an entire chainsaw shoved into her abdomen and is raised up into the air, just like the Mortal Kombat fatality that they use for Leatherface in like MKX.
It is a
He lifts
fatality, yeah.
her, yeah, he lifts her up into the air with the chainsaw, and there's a hilarious shot of her just like on the chainsaw blade.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, you would think that that's the end of her,
Yeah,
right?
he flings her to across the street and into a dumpster as
And
well.
surely she's dead from all of that, considering
Surely.
that a light stomach laceration killed off a main character in the first 10 minutes of the movie, and a jaw slash also killed a
Yeah,
character
and
off.
now she surely is missing her diaphragm, lungs, spine, you
Right.
know.
She's probably, if she is alive, she's at least paralyzed, right?
There's no way
Uh,
she's alive.
but no, there is a struggle that ensues because Melody, behind the wheel of the van, instead of just driving away, tries to run him over with the van, and he throws the chainsaw at the window. She swerves off of the road and crashes because she's brilliant.
Into
Um,
Richter's garage.
right, right. This is important because as Melody is very wounded behind the wheel, and she tells Lila to run off because it's all over for her now,
She's
and
got
Lila
a
just, yeah,
rod in her
Lila,
leg now and she can't get out of
mhm.
the car.
Lila just needs to escape without her. Uh, Lila goes, and as Leatherface approaches, she grabs an AR-15, and I thought like, okay, this is gonna be the end of the movie. You know, I was like, okay, this is how it's gonna happen. Foolishly, well, she goes to shoot him, and she doesn't have it cocked or whatever. She doesn't know how to use the gun, and he just starts sprinting at her with the chainsaw and gets her on the ground. And as he's about to take one fatal swing at Lila, who saves her? Not Melody, who is alive but injured. No, it's the woman that should be dead that just had an entire chainsaw driven through her body
Into
and
her
then was
chest cavity, yeah.
and then was flung 15 feet into a dumpster. Sally Hardesty shoots at him from probably like 15 yards, 20 yards with a shotgun, but we won't even get into that.
No, she became a sniper. She lived, and as she got bisected and flung, she managed to keep a firm grip on that shotgun the whole time.
Yeah, uh, she shoots him and does enough damage to where he's like hurt, and Lila's able to escape. And she also goes and picks up Melody on the way. She's able to save her. Melody, for somebody with a massive piece of rebar through her leg, is all of a sudden very spry.
Yeah, no, she was like, "Get out of here, sister! I'm gonna die. He's gonna get me." And then, pan back to her. She just pulls the thing out of her leg, jumps out of the car, and starts running. It was like you could have done that the whole time. I guess you just chose now. And
Yeah,
just before Sally Hardesty dies, she looks at Lila and says, "Don't run, or you'll think about him for the rest of your life." And it's supposed to be like you gotta kill him, or you'll be so traumatized you're gonna want to hunt him like she did. It's dumb. It's and it definitely is just there to perpetuate them not escaping and making the movie run on longer.
Yeah. Uh, and by this point, you have a throbbing headache. You wonder why you're watching this movie a second time. We do, however, get a pretty cool setting, though it's ridiculous. I liked the movie theater, the abandoned movie theater. I like the look of that
I
place.
do too. Well, this whole Dead by Daylight town is cool. It starts raining
Yeah,
at one point too, which once again, ecology is weird. If it's a desert, it starts raining, but it looked cool.
yeah, I agree. Um, they escape into this abandoned theater. It's cool. It's got an old marquee, and like Adam was describing earlier, there's a bunch of water damage, and like in the center of the theater, for some reason, there is a massive hole full of water, and it's very deep. um, I, can you talk about the struggle? Because I actually don't quite remember
Yeah,
how the events take
sure.
place.
I don't know what. Yeah, like he's. I don't know why this place got shelled in the war or something, but there's this huge pool in the middle of this theater, and she sees the outline of Leatherface hiding behind this like curtain, and she pulls it back, and it was a trap. He put his chainsaw down next to this mannequin so it would sound like he's behind there, and she realized it was a trick. And I really like this shot. Leatherface comes full football tackling this woman, like slams into her, and they both fly into the pool. And then we
Yeah.
see, yeah,
Oh, I was gonna say between that and his throwing form with the hammer, he could have had a future playing ball at UT.
maybe he used to play football. Maybe this is part of the backstory we haven't seen.
But instead, he chose to wear faces.
Yeah, and chose.
He chose human skin over the old pigskin.
That's true. He chose long pigskin.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we just see the pool of water like being still, and I assume they're both underwater for like a long time. And then Lila shoots up and takes a huge breath and starts crawling out of the pool. Um, and how could she have possibly escaped his grip? They do not explain, and you will not get an answer to that question. She starts crawling towards her shotgun. Leatherface gets out and like flings his chainsaw across the floor, and it does like a spin and smashes into her leg, and then she hits the ground. And you don't see her foot, but like at this point, a spinning chainsaw has hit your foot. I assume your foot is gone. I assume you don't have a foot anymore, right?
You would think.
You would think. But
But
then, as he's about to do another final coup de grace with the chainsaw, freaking Melody shows up again, and I think, does she shoot him or does she hit him with the hammer?
no, Melody picks up the chainsaw, and as he stands over her, she does like a massive uppercut with it and knocks him in the chin. And very dramatically, in slow motion, he starts to fall backward into the pool. And that's it. He's dead.
You notice she hits him with a chainsaw in a way that somehow he didn't get, gorily bisected or something, and he just kind of falls back like he got punched in the chin. And then they both get up and walk away?
He's dead, Adam. Come on.
Well, no, I mean, how are they able to walk? She has had a rod through her leg, and I thought her sister was missing a foot, but then she,
Nope.
has both her feet, and she's kind of limping? But what happened to her foot? What happened to that chainsaw?
And then, as if it doesn't get any more nonsensical, they just start to leave. Like, the next morning, she's no longer covered in poop. She looks great. They both, I guess, had a shower.
Well, it rained.
Lila finds Richter's hat on the ground. They get in the
No,
Tesla.
it's not. It's Sally Hardesti's hat.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Even better.
Because now she's the new Sally Hardesti.
Whose corpse is like probably still there.
Oh yeah,
Just,
like baking
by
in
the
the
way.
sun.
Right. and they just start to drive away.
No, no, no,
In
no,
the
no. Even worse than they start to drive away.
You're right.
They walk into a Tesla ad, and now we're watching a Tesla ad, and it's so bizarre. They like shot of the front of the car, like that's the first shot. They open it, they get in, the sun is shining. It's literally a Tesla ad. It's like they're super happy. They're like, I'm so glad it's all over. They like turn on the GPS. You see the console of the Tesla turn on, setting like a new route and starts driving itself. Like it is an ad.
And
It
in
is,
big bold letters, it's like Austin, Texas.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it sets the destination. It starts going. So brazen. Like we're in a Tesla ad now.
Oh yeah. Well, but then shortly after they share a laugh, we get an abrupt, and we know this is going to happen because the final blow to Leatherface was one of the weakest things
Yeah.
ever. He pops up, breaks the window, takes Melody out of the car, and as Lila shoots her head out of the sunroof to look behind to see what Leatherface is going to do, he chops off Melody's head with a chainsaw, holds it up, and does that iconic Texas Chainsaw Massacre dance
The
that he does with
chainsaw
the
dance,
chainsaw.
yeah.
Yeah. And, she's screaming, no, no, as the car drives on autopilot into the sunset. And that's the end of the movie.
How about that ending? I despise this ending.
I despise this movie. I hate that ending. I actually went to sleep angry.
That ending was so upsetting. You spend the whole movie, like, they really make a big deal about keeping Melody alive. She nearly dies so many times. She literally gives speeches like she's about to die. And then she lives. She gets literally shit on and she lives and she gets away. And then in what can't even be a 2-second long shot, she gets pulled out of the car and gets her head chopped off in
Yep.
literally 2 seconds. It's so anticlimactic.
Yeah, it's really anticlimactic.
And it's just for the surprise factor. And you aren't even surprised by it because it's a slasher movie and you expect that kind of thing.
Now, something that I didn't know until my second time watching this movie is that there's a post-credit scene.
Yeah, I did know
Did you
this.
wait and see it?
Yeah, I was like, it's 2022. There's going to be a post-credit scene. And there was.
That's a good point. There was. Now, I know that there were talks, both Fede Alvarez and the director of this movie, who I'm blanking on his name right now.
David Blue Garcia. Yeah.
Yeah. They've both talked about their interest in being involved in a sequel, so it's very possible that it's going to happen. And it seems as though they're setting that up because the post-credit scene is very short. It's like maybe 2 or 3 seconds. But it's Leatherface going back to the iconic house from the first movie. And that's the movie. That's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. And it sucks.
It's so dumb. I recommend watching it, though.
I do too. No, yeah, for as much as I ragged on it, it's on Netflix. If you have a Netflix subscription, like freaking 70% of Americans do, go watch it because it's mindless entertainment and it's really fun to feel better about yourself while you watch it.
Yeah. An hour and 21 minutes. A lot happens in that hour and 21 minutes. It at least is pretty fast paced.
Yeah,
give it that. There's no
fast-paced.
slog.
There is no slog. Yeah, I mean, it does move along pretty well.
I think it's fun to watch stupid movies.
It is. It is. That is the highest honor I can give this movie. Is like it's inoffensive for an hour and 21 minutes. Actually, it's offensive, but you can watch it.
Yeah, it's stomachable.
Yeah, it takes longer to make a pot roast, so go watch this movie.
That's true. I want to read you the description on Google, maybe Netflix. It says, influencers looking to breathe new life into a Texas ghost town encounter Leatherface, the legendary killer who wears a mask of human skin. And I think that if that description doesn't tell you this movie's stupid, then
yeah.
Like that really is the plot.
It is. So this movie, my final thoughts, if I could just put a button on all of this, is this movie is terrible. I hated it, but it's an hour and 21 minutes and you can laugh at it. So why not give it a watch?
Yeah, I don't even know if I hated it. There's definitely like parts of it that I enjoyed, and there are definitely parts of it I despised. But it was very fun, very fun. You could watch
There it
it
is.
twice in 2 days. So,
That's true.
all right.
All
Well,
right, buddy. Well,
thank you
I
so much.
I feel like I ran a marathon after talking about this thing.
I do too. There was a lot to talk about, and thank
There
you
was.
for talking about it with me.
Of course.
Yeah,
That's what
and
we do.
it's what we do. It's what I do. Thank you everybody for listening. Goodbye.